Okay, so we're going to kick off, as we always do, with the Google Workspace update. So surprisingly, actually, I thought it had been a quiet summer, but there's been a ton of updates the last few weeks. So we'll try to just stick to the highlight updates, the most important ones, which I think you people should be aware of. We'll probably skip through a few slides. Anyway, anybody can access this. It's shared in the Google Meet in the calendar invitation, and you can also just go to workspaceupdates.com. We have a link there also. So let's kick it off. Google just announced just yesterday an update to live streaming and reducing bandwidth. And you can actually see basically what they're doing. There's obviously some technical information behind this, but I think the image here to the right clearly explains it. Rather than individually streaming from your internet access point to every single device in the organization, if everybody's streaming the same stream, there's now technology which enables essentially, I would say, peer-to-peer streaming. So if you look at the screen on the right, the image on the right, the organization accesses the stream, and then individual peers will share the stream to other computers. This would be really useful if you have hundreds or perhaps 1,000 or more users in a very large organization accessing the same live stream. So perhaps at the start of the year, a new school-wide stream to every device or something like that. Anyway, the full details are built in here. It's called Enterprise Content Delivery Network. This is disabled by default. You have to go to the admin console to enable it. Okay, this was just announced this week as well. Google Drive inventory reporting. What you're able to do here in additional controls is you can set up export of your drive details. So things like you can understand the full scope of your data assets. You can look at sensitive information, compliance with your data policies via BigQuery. So you can set this up by going to the admin console, reporting, BigQuery export, drive inventory export. Actually, if you go to the support article, they've included the wrong link to access this in the admin console. This is the correct link just down here. That's the correct link. So just go to admin console reporting, BigQuery export, drive inventory export. This is only for schools that have Education Plus or Education Standard, which I think is most of the schools that we have here today.
Can I just jump in there on that one, James?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be a really useful feature, extending what you can already do with BigQuery. I think particularly useful for building up your own Looker Studio dashboard about what's happening in terms of file access on your domain, and much more easily being able to see what files are being shared externally for users. So I'm envisaging we'll be able to create a Looker Studio dashboard which staff could log on to and quickly at a glance see top information like what files are they're sharing externally, what are their biggest files in their drive, and other types of information like that. So I think there's some interesting things we can develop here using this.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, as we'll see in a few slides' time, Google has created a few controls which are unearthing some of those policy controls into more of a centralized location. So obviously, there's a big focus on that currently. Thanks for that context, Peter. Just a quick update to appointment slots. Now they're fully rolled out, so any appointments need to be booked through appointment schedules. So, sorry, I think I said slots. Slots have gone away. Schedules are replacing slots. I'm sure everybody's seen it. We've demoed it already, but now you need to use schedules to create your appointment schedules within Google Calendar. There's another update we'll talk about just in a moment about that as well. Client-side encryption, we're going to skip past that one. Okay, this is one of there's a couple of really big ones, I think, that are good for schools to be aware of for their staff. If you are using Google Classroom, guardians who have the weekly email or the update emails receiving information about assignments will now have the ability to click through and actually see a preview of the work from Google Classroom. So if you have guardian summaries available on Google Classroom, parents or guardians will now actually be able to see a preview or a summary of the actual work that's been assigned within Google Classroom. This will be created by default if guardian summaries are already enabled and emails are attached to student accounts. So in a guardian or a parent email is already attached to a student account, then this will automatically be rolled out. Again, this is just for Education Plus, by the way. Yeah, many of these more premium, I think we know by now, many of these more premium releases are all just coming to Education Plus. And I guess this is a little bit related to what we were just talking about data policies. When you're assigning different DLP rules or trust rules, sometimes as a viewer of the file that's maybe being controlled by one of those policies, it's not always clear as to why you can't perform an action. And so what Google is now doing is unearthing much better visibility on the policies which are being applied to a file, to a document. And you can see here from a little animated GIF that a side panel will open up and it will give you an overview of the policies which are applied to that specific file. So if you go ahead, if a user clicks on a file and finds that they can't share it, there should be better visibility on the reasons why they're not able to share that file. Okay, Meep hardware, I'm going to skip past that one. Okay, here's one for developers. You can now import and export Markdown in Google Docs. So if you have any need to use Markdown, sharing code and so on, Google Docs is obviously a great collaborative space to do that from. And you can now do that with Google Docs. You can go both ways, forwards and backwards, so import and export. So about a week ago, Richard asked me about this. So Richard over at Rugby, who I don't think is here, asked me about this, and it was a good question. So we saw this update, and it's the Workspace extensions for Gmail Drive and Google Docs, and now available in the beta for Gemini. So what that means is, rather than using Gemini from your document from Google Drive, so you could open up a document in Google Docs, you'd have the side panel, you can query other documents to do your summarization or whatever you may be working on. You can now actually go to gemini.google.com and access that data from Google Drive from gemini.google.com. That's what this release pertains to. Now, the question really is, well, why would you do that? Why would you not stick inside of Docs? Well, that kind of makes Gemini become the home for all of your sort of Gemini work. Alex, I'll come back to you, but you should be eligible for this. But there is, I believe there's still some country restrictions on specific things within Gemini. So Alex, I'll speak to you separately about that. It's a good question. Yes, we'll look at that later. So it is available if you have Gemini Education. The thing is, Google Gemini has a number of different extensions which are not available to Workspace currently. So things like YouTube and I think Google Flights, for example, and many more are extensions to Gemini on personal accounts. If you go to a personal account, you open up Gemini, there's lots of extensions, whereas Workspace currently has a restricted number, presumably due to data access and the policies with Google Education. So I'm not sure if I made that any clearer, but the extensions are available. And Alex, I'll come back to you a little bit later. There have been some updates to syncing, creating classes from your SIS. So Google supports SIS, which are on the one roster standard. And I'll call out one particularly, which is the PowerSchool student information system, which I know many schools are using. There is now a sync, an export for grades and rosters with PowerSchool. So the SIS sync that is currently supported is mostly with the very big US SIS, but PowerSchool was just recently announced for a sync, and the details are there. You can export grades to specifically PowerTeacher Pro Gradebook within PowerSchool. I know there's a number of different platforms within PowerSchool, so there's a little bit of information to read behind this, but it is great to see PowerSchool getting support for this. Okay, little update to Shared Drive, increased number of nested folders to 100 and 500,000 items. Okay, here's a big one. People have been asking about this for months. Google announced it, e-signature. It is now rolled out or being rolled out. So this is 12th of July, so just over a week ago. It says beginning on the 15th of July, they will be rolling out for e-signature to applicable Google Workspace editions. That includes Education Plus. So if you haven't seen it just yet, you should be seeing it in the next week or so. We know that people in the community had said they'd seen this in Google Drive, they'd seen the menu item, but weren't able to access it. Hopefully by the end of next week, usually after 2 weeks, they will complete the global rollout and everybody will see e-signatures. Okay, API update, we'll skip past that one. Google Meet hardware, we'll pass that. Update to Meet and Zoom interoperability. I think we'll skip past this one. The slide is there if people want to refer to it. And again, with Apple volume purchasing, just a moment. Okay. This is a cool update. If you are creating, I think we all are, a lot of Google Calendar invites and meetings, you're now able to pre-provision meeting notes, pre-configure meeting notes, recordings, and transcripts from the calendar invite. So rather than having to go into the Google Meet to initiate the recording or to start the notes or start the meeting recordings, you can do that all beforehand. You can set that up. So all of those settings are now available within the calendar invite. That's always great if, like me, you forget to hit record at the start of the meeting, which is why we have my wonderful colleague Jane helping out with that. There are, so in addition to the appointment scheduling, replacing appointment slots, there's also been more granular controls with the appointment schedules. Rather than having a weekly schedule, you could set up appointment schedules for 1 week. So for example, if teachers are running parent meetings, they could set up an appointment schedule just for 1 week, or they could repeat it bi-weekly. There's multiple different more granular controls on how you create those schedules now. Oh, actually, this is the big one. This was the big one for me. You can add co-hosts, but you can also allow guests to invite other people. I always felt that was a weakness of appointment schedules, is we're typically inviting a team to our calls. And if you sign up, you can only add one person. Now, if you enable your appointment schedule, there's a setting there to allow guests to invite other guests. Guests to invite guests. I think that makes sense. Okay, this goes back to what we were talking about, and Peter, you were talking about just unearthing what's happening with data on your tenancy. Google's now combined those compliance and data controls into a single source in the admin console. You can actually see it in the image, but just down here at the bottom of the screen, we can see here under the data menu, you have compliance and data import and export controls all in one place. So those all exist in one place now. This access management is more to do with Google Cloud. Essentially, it controls when Google part of it controls when Google support contacts you, you're restricting what data access they have and indeed where they access from as well. But we'll skip past that one. An update to data regions reporting. I'll leave that one there. So we have a lot of updates. Want to try and get through as many as we can before we can break out to a Q&A. Peter, you covered this one already, I think. Early access apps controls are changing.
No, I was talking about less secure apps being shut down. So this is, a different update.
Yeah. So early access apps would, when they transition to additional Google service, it is turned on or off based upon your new services preference. And yeah, I'm just reading this out now. Can't think of a better way of paraphrasing this. Okay, so what this is going to match is your additional services. So early access app will be turned on if additional services are turned on by default. Early access app will, when it changes to an additional service, it will be turned off if your new apps under additional services are turned off by default as well. So just a change in when early access apps become additional Google services, whether they are on or off by default. Classroom has seen a couple of updates really related to missing grades and allowing students to skip a grade as well, disabling of submission, and so on. And this is just an improvement to that as well. You can manually mark assignment as missing or add a default draft score as well. So for example, if you know a student is working on a project and they need to get a draft score, you can put that in. This is really obviously for the teachers within schools. Google has added somewhat, I guess, a handy tool here. If you, I'm not going to be acidic. Your staff now have the ability to request a Gemini license to the administrator of the domain. So you can turn this off. I believe you can turn this off. But what this does, it enables any staff member within your organization to request a Gemini license. There'll be a Ask My Admin for a Gemini license. And I believe you can turn this off. You can disable these requests prior to this update. So you do want to look at this. Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yes, it's a good one. So if you want to enable your users to request a Gemini license from you, you may check that as enabled. Otherwise, you can disable that. Okay, large screen Android devices, we'll skip this one, but just I can't imagine many people using multi-accounts in education domain on Google Keep on a large screen Android device. I think that's a very small subset of people. Okay, Peter and I, we talked about this a few weeks ago about Gemini Workspace usage reports. So these are coming to any users with a Google Workspace license on the domain. So you can have better feedback on how users are using their Gemini licenses. So that will be rolling out. This will be under reporting, obviously. You can look at the menu, generative AI, Gemini reports, and you'll see this report on the right-hand side. You can see that usage.
One thing to note on that usage, currently it's only counting interaction with Gemini through Workspace apps. So it's not actually counting people going to the chat Gemini experience. So it's just for Workspace apps currently, but I think more detail is going to be added to this over time.
Yeah, I think this is, and Alex, you just pointed that out as well. Yeah, there are updates coming to this over the next few months. Google's talked about a number of updates coming to this. As they've added those Workspace extensions to Gemini, a lot more people are going to be going to Gemini for those interactions. So yeah, it would make sense for them to enable that as well. Okay, this is great for the apps events community. We're going to be able to increase the upper limit to 500,000 members in our Google Chat space. So when Apps EDU explodes, we'll be able to cover that 500,000. So let's increase the number of space members from 8,000 to 50,000, now to 500,000 members. Probably good for a very large district. Google Sheets had an update, improved calculation speed within Google Sheets. This is great if you're a heavy user of Google Sheets. I think everybody here is a heavy user of Google Sheets. So improved calculation speed across all the formulas, pivot tables, conditional formatting, and more, regardless of file size. So I've occasionally noticed with very large files with complex formulas, it can slow down a little bit. That should help out with that. So API update, we'll skip past that one. This is a Colab update. So Google Colab is a Jupyter notebook service. It's a brilliant tool. They now have additional versions of Colab. So there is a basic version of Colab, which is for free. The existing Colab is free. It's a brilliant tool. They have additional versions of Colab for more complex development and calculations and so on. I think we'll skip that one. Gemini side panel updates. So I'm just going to briefly pass through this one. Peter and I did a few videos on this last month, and I've linked to those videos just here on the slide. So if you've got the slide, just go through and click on that link, and you'll see what the side panel looks like. If you have a Gemini Workspace license, of course, you'll see what the side panel looks like. But the side panel is what we've been excited for. You can just see the images there, the little GIF there on the document on the left. The side panel is where you can summarize other documents. You can draw on data within other documents directly within Google Docs. It's a really cool thing to use. It really makes Gemini much more powerful rather than just existing within that Gemini chat space, that chat window. It's now sitting within Docs. It's very, very powerful now. But again, there are videos there, and we'll leave the overview here. We've covered that a few times. So e-signature is live. I forget. I think this is just a control about e-signatures. Oh yeah, enabling e-signatures. As it's being rolled out, just enabling it on the domain. That is all. By OU. So you can enable e-signature access by OU on the domain. This will be a developer update. So skip that one. Okay, we did mention this one a little while ago. Google Forms. You can now connect a Google form to AppSheet. And so those existing data flows that you may have within Google Forms to Google Sheets, you can now continue to use those Google Forms, but connect it to an AppSheet for more advanced control of that data. If you want to do some kind of automation, you can use that Google form as the entry point into AppSheet. This would be particularly useful if you are sharing, if you want to capture data from parents, rather than sending out an AppSheet or opening up an AppSheet to parents, you could just use a form to capture that data, and then that could feed into AppSheet. Okay. I think we're almost there. Yeah, just like this one. So Google Meet is adding additional languages to translated captions and closed captions as well. It's important to highlight, Google is changing how captions are licensed. So previously, translated captions would exist within Google Workspace within one of the paid editions. Now translated captions are being moved to a Gemini license. All of the details are here, but it's definitely worth reading into. If you are using translated captions as an organization, it's well worth understanding how those are going to change over the next, I think it's over the next 6 months. I believe it's from January 25. Captions, translated captions, will be available under Gemini. Google is, of course, stating that they're improving captions and they're using Gemini to improve captions, and that's why they're moving. I'm just flagging that. It's worth looking at this article if you're using captions or translated captions across the organization. Do check this one out. Okay, I think we'll finish with this one. We already covered this a few months ago, Peter, I think. If you're creating interactive YouTube assignments in Google Classroom, you can now do that more quickly with AI. When you create an interactive YouTube assignment, it will now offer questions. So you'll open up a video, rather than you having to choose where to put all the questions. On some videos, it will suggest questions to add to the video. So we'll do that with, obviously, using AI. I guess that they're saying they've put AI into this to enable that feature. So you can automatically add questions to your video, but you can also edit those. When any suggestions come up, you can edit those. You still have full control over them as well. This will be a good one for the teachers when they come back. Okay, I think that is it. Yes, I know we talked about read along. Yes. Okay, that seemed to be a lot of updates for a summer update call.